The following is rated not safe for work. It contains strong language, adult situations, and lots of spoilers. Discretion is advised.
In the criminal justice system, cinematic-based offenses are considered especially heinous. The dedicated attorneys who investigate these villainous films are members of an elite squad known as the Reels of Justice. These are their stories.
Order, please, order. The Reels of Justice is now in session. Just 50,000 points on Double Dragon Ryan Luis Rodriguez presiding. Your eyes for the Honorable Judge Rodriguez.
50,000 points on Double Dragon?
Radical!
Well, that was belabored. Be seated. Welcome to the Reels of Justice. Today we are hearing the case of The People versus the Wizard, a 1989 travel adventure movie, whatever that means, about two young brothers hitchhiking to California to compete in a video game tournament. See, that part makes more sense. For those of you unfamiliar with our court proceedings, we are here to determine if this film is guilty of being a bad movie. As always, in this courtroom, films are to be considered excellent until proven awful, and the burden of proof lies upon the prosecution to prove beyond a shadow of a reasonable doubt that this film is guilty. Mr. Maynard Bangs, you are representing the prosecution. You may present your opening statement.
Thank you, Your Honor. Distinguished members of the court, allow me to take you on a whimsical journey to a more innocent time, popularly known as the late 80s. A little film was released around this time, fondly remembered by some, about a very special individual who displayed a lot of the telltale signs of neurodivergence, including certain very convenient savant abilities. And because of his differences, this individual is confined to a mental institution by some very callous members of his family. But, as luck would have it, this person is freed by his estranged brother. Together, the two hit the road to sunny Los Angeles, leveraging our protagonist's unique gifts along the way to grift rubes and form an even stronger brotherly bond. The film I'm referring to is, of course, 1988's Rain Man, a film that our defendant today has blatantly ripped off. Today, I will seek to prove that 1989's The Wizard is nothing more than Rain Man with Dustin Hoffman and Tom Cruise substituted for snot-nosed brats and card counting substituted by Nintendo's latest pixelated propaganda. And I say this at very great risk, because Shuntaro Furukawa has already repeatedly threatened to imprison my loved ones at the top of a multi-layered scaffold structure defended by a barrel-hurling gorilla. Nevertheless, he persisted. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bangs. Appearing on behalf of the defense is Mr. Joe Russo. Please present your opening statement.
Everyone, Your Honor, the court, the jury, I would like you to think about the filmmaking process for a second. The idea that two movies that came out the same year could have copied each other, could be the same thing, is impossible. It is an impossibility. And I want you to take a step back and think about the last time you saw a movie with product placement as blatant as something as The Wizard, but with the heart of a great drama with a great cast inside of it. The Wizard shouldn't be a good movie, but because of the directing, because of the cast, and because of the heart that it emotes, it is. It is by far one of the best examples of what you could do with product placement in cinema history.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Russo. Mr. Bangs, you may proceed with your first exhibit.
Well, I already started the ball rolling in my opening statement. This movie is Rain Man for Small Puddles, to quote Rita Kempley's review in the Washington Post. And it is, the story of this movie is entirely the plot of Rain Man, which they wrapped around a shameless 90-some-odd minute commercial for Nintendo. Now, Joe is saying that's a coincidence. If it is, it's a hell of a coincidence. I mean, that is eerie stuff that they got this lined up so close together. Also, it's got a lot of stuff reminiscent to Tommy, even down to, Pinball Wizard, The Wizard. So there's a lot of elements that we've seen before from this film. But let's talk about commercialism. right? Product placement has been a reality within the film industry since pictures first took motion. You know, we all know the only reason E.T. likes Reese's Pieces is because M&M's passed on the deal. But The Wizard is a new level of egregious. Take the consumerism out of this movie, and you've got no movie left. From its very conception, this film was created with no other purpose than to push Nintendo products. Universal Studios worked directly with Nintendo during production to get their approval on how the product should be portrayed. They even gave them control over the script. Nintendo even collected a licensing fee and sent their director of marketing to the set. Some 30s even gave out copies of Pocket Power, an abridged version of Nintendo Power magazine. And in addition, The Wizard was conveniently released December 15th. And only a couple months before that, in October, the Power Glove was first released. And despite a complete lack of games it was compatible with, the Power Glove sold like 1 million units. How many disappointed children arose Christmas morning 1989 to find their parents had shelled out the $75 for this useless hunk of plastic, all because they wanted to be so bad like evil gamer Lucas Barton? Turns out the Power Glove really was so bad, just not the way Lucas meant it.
What is that adjusted for inflation?
$75. Like 150.
Oh my god,
boy!
Yeah, and again, like no games for it. Like it said it should have been compatible for all games. That those games that were not made for it tended not to work very well for them. There were 2 that were packaged with it. One was like a 3D ball game, and the other is a fighter. And they were designed to specifically work with the glove, but weren't very good. And all the other games were kind of glitchy with it. It didn't tend to work out well with anything.
This is all context that we desperately need.
The Power Glove's important.
I think so.
I mean, also, can I?
Yeah.
Yes, please do interject.
Thank you. I would like to interject for 1 second. This has nothing to do with the movie.
Oh, of course it does. This is contextualizing why this movie was made. This is nothing but a commercial that was set to be released at Christmas to advertise the coming products. The Power Glove, which was released a couple months prior.
The quality of the Power Glove, objection, the quality of the Power Glove is irrelevant to the quality of this movie.
It is relevant to the dashed dreams of all the children who got that Power Glove.
Well, I see we're getting to the heart of this matter.
It's a
Someone was
dream-crushing
very
movie.
disappointed about the Power Glove.
Yes, some of us are.
Movie.
And of course, you know, the film is notorious for the first time many in North America would get a preview of Super Mario Brothers 3, the centerpiece of the film's big final showdown. Basically, it's like the only reason this movie exists is to show a little bit of footage from that movie. And of course, despite the fact that nobody in the audience should have ever seen or played this game before, several of the onlookers have advice about the magic flute, which is actually a warp whistle, which allows Jimmy to travel to any level in the game and ultimately win the big competition. But by the way, it's stupid that Jimmy doesn't use the whistle to actually travel to the final level, which would explain why he's able to catch up. He only just travels to the next one. Anyway, they weren't worried about that. The point is, the whole thing is an extended commercial. That is my point. And I just wanted to gab some digs on the Power Glove, which is nowhere near as bad as Lucas says it is. But this thing is all about pushing these products in front of kids right around Christmas so that they can ask for them and Nintendo can make some bank off of it.
Should have asked for the NES Advantage, man.
Mr. Russo, is this egregious?
What is a movie but a product itself, right? A product to be sold to us. So the fact that they wanted to sell products, to me, is no different than the reason we make movies at all. It is called show business for a reason, not show fun. So,
show fun. I love it.
I'll tell you this. It is a movie that is derived from product placement, but that is not the origin of this movie. They wanted to make the Karate Kid with video games. They just happened to have access to the greatest video game company in the world, in history, at the peak of their 80s power, right when they were about to put out their biggest sequel ever. Yes, Did they script things to Nintendo products? Absolutely. But at the heart of this movie, it's really a story about a broken family coming back together. And that is ultimately why this movie works.
Well, I'm going to make
Mr.
an
Bangs?
objection to that objection. The reason this
Please
movie
do.
exists is that Universal Pictures, The Jetsons, wasn't ready for the December release, and they needed something to fill the holiday time slot. That's why they reached out. And yes, they Karate Kid with video games. There you go. Another thing that's not particularly original. And yes, they do reach out to the highest bidder and get it. But, you know, it's not even just constant Nintendo shilling you get in here. You also get a nice plug for Universal Studios Hollywood tour, right?
Absolutely.
Complete with animatronic King Kong cameo. You know, come to majestic Universal Studios Hollywood. Take the world-famous studio tour. Be chased down by a child bounty hunter while onlookers do nothing. Win $50,000 playing video games for 15 minutes. And find the love of your life at age 13. It's a valuable, heartwarming lesson. Like, if we consider Mac and Me bad for being too commercial because it has one dance sequence that takes place in McDonald's, then how the hell can we even begin to wrap our minds around a film like this?
Would you like me to tell you?
Yes.
Of course we would. Get on with it.
Fred Savage, Jenny Lewis, Christian Slater, Beau Bridges. An amazing turn from a very young Luke Edwards. Terrific cast up and down. You don't get quality actors like that if you don't have material with heart at its center. And that, I think, is what attracted such a great cast. You had a director, Todd Holland, coming off of Steven Spielberg's amazing stories. He took all of that skill and all of that storytelling, and he applied it to what should be a Mac and Me. But instead, we have a story that's about a young boy with autism who brings his family back together through the video games, through his proving to them that he is not someone who is should be tossed aside by society, but is someone who has worth. And that's a pretty powerful thing. A lot of people, if you ask them how the first Rocky movie ended, what do they say? What would you guys say? How did the first Rocky movie end?
The ship sinks.
He lost.
No, he gets with Adrian.
He lost, right? But that's not how the movie ends. The movie ends with him getting Adrian, with him believing in his self-worth, with him surviving the 15 rounds. The last words of Rocky aren't "I won," they're "I love you. I love you," right? This isn't a movie about winning a video game tournament where Super Mario 3 is the centerpiece. This is a movie about a broken family devastated by tragedy, coming back together through watching their son accomplish something incredible. The movie doesn't end at the video game tournament. The movie very smartly ends with the family resolving their issues at a place that is meaningful to them. The iconic Palm Springs dinosaurs, which every time I drive by, I point to and say, California. Just like Luke Edwards, Jimmy Woods. And that at that place, in that moment, that's what makes this movie work. It's not a movie about video games. It's a movie about a family.
Mr. Bangs, is there actual emotion to be found in this film?
I don't think so. If we're going to talk about Jimmy, I think there's emotion, but I think it's kind of copy and pasted from some others. So I don't know if there's emotions, not real emotion. I think it's a simulacrum of those kinds of things.
Ooh, that's a Dylan word.
So let's talk about Jimmy, right? Because we can assume that Jimmy is somewhere on the autism spectrum. The movie never really definitively says whether he is, but he shows signs of like social withdrawal. He's not very verbal. He's obsessed with like California and building structures, like they said. This could also be like that current behavior could stem from like PTSD following the death of his sister, or it could be a mix of both. Autistic people are certainly susceptible to trauma, as we all are. The trouble is that we don't really get to see the before and after of Jimmy's trauma. We don't know what he was like prior to his sister's death, and ultimately we don't really get to see what Jimmy is like once he's able to return or bring the lunchbox to California. and the lunchbox is filled with mementos of his sister that he leaves at the Cabazon Dinosaurs attraction, as we all know from Pee-wee's Big Adventure. All we see is this snapshot of Jimmy in this time when he's run away, so we have no ability to contextualize what his arc might be. Is he going to become more verbal now? Is he going to begin to cope with his sister's death? Is he going to keep playing video games? Is he going to be institutionalized again? These aren't really questions that the film answers. They leave them open-ended, and I think they're important questions to answer because they're really the real stakes of what this film should have been, beyond being a big Nintendo ad. But it seems like the film doesn't even really care about it. So, seemingly the only reason Jimmy is portrayed as neurodivergent at all here is so he can be miraculously good at video games without needing to explain why. It also perpetuates a harmful stereotype that all autistic people have savant abilities, when in reality, only about 10% of autistic people display savant abilities, which is pretty good, considering only 1% of neurotypical people do. But these representations in Hollywood remain problematic because it sets up this expectation that Jimmy only deserves this kind of loyalty and friendship because he's a savant. A lot like you said earlier about him proving his worth through the video games. A lot like the problems within Rain Man, we have to wonder if Tom Cruise's Charlie would have seen the good in Dustin Hoffman's Raymond if Raymond wasn't preternaturally good at gambling and helping Charlie get out of debt. If his autism wasn't useful or exploitable, does it still have any worth or merit? The same can be asked here of Jimmy, although Corey seems to have a bond with him prior to even knowing his video game ability. His acceptance from Haley is entirely contingent on its exploitability. At one point in the film, when Jimmy's been taken into custody by the child bounty hunter, just want to repeat that again, child bounty hunter.
Perfectly normal thing.
Yes, of course. Yeah, like how exactly do you apply for that job? Like, yeah, I have a lot of experience. A lot of experience capturing children and whisking them away against their will. Why not hire me? But
use my skills for good now.
Haley asked Corey, "Did you really have a chance?" And it's only after he confirms that he thinks Jimmy could win the contest that she agrees to call her trucker friends to rescue Jimmy. A less spectacularly talented Jimmy would have been doomed. In fact, the whole point of the journey to the video game contest is, as you said, is to justify Jimmy's worth, his existence. Corey wants to prove Jimmy doesn't belong in a home, and he thinks he can only do it by winning the competition. And after Jimmy wins, everyone cheers for him, and even his stepdad, who wanted to put him in a home to begin with, says it was pretty remarkable. Jimmy has earned his acceptance due to his exceptional abilities, but what a dangerous standard that sets for neurodivergent people who aren't insanely good at video games. And with that, I'll rest.
Mr. Russo, is Jimmy problematic?
I think if you apply a narrow 2023 lens to a movie from 1989, you could find problems in it. But if you look at it from a 1989 perspective, it was revolutionary in what it was doing. It was exposing young audiences to a character like this for the first time. It was letting me...
Second time. We already had Rain Man.
Well, I didn't watch Rain Man as a 5-year-old, did you?
I did. It was hilarious.
How'd you feel about the sex scene, though, in Rain Man when you were 5 years old?
Really liked that as a 5-year-old, actually. It was big fan.
It was exposing young Nintendo fans across the country to a character that was different from what they maybe knew or seen in their regular life. And I think the fact that it shows such a positive arc for Jimmy it opened my eyes to a different type of person. It prepared me for a movie like Rain Man when I inevitably saw it, probably within 5 to 10 years later. But it to me, Jimmy's character was special and it was different, and it touched a lot of people's hearts. And, so yeah, could you say, oh, it could have done this or could have done that differently in hindsight? Absolutely. But we're talking about something that was very, very new at that time to our culture. And to put it in a movie, again, about a video game is probably a left of center idea that you could ever even think of. And that's why it's so much more than just a commercial.
I don't know, if his like savant ability was juggling chainsaws, that would be way more left of center. That might be very interesting.
It would be a very different movie, especially if he missed.
Need a different kind of power glove for that.
Yeah. I do just want to say, on the power glove topic, and let's just get it out of the way now. The actor who had the power glove has gone to jail for some very bad things.
Well, that he's not on trial. The actor's not on trial. Just the movie he made.
He's already been on trial.
yeah. So let's just put that out there and get that out of the way. That out of the way now.
Funny, if you didn't mention it, none of us would know.
Yeah,
I had no idea.
Didn't research him at all.
Idea.
Now it's Your Honor. I'd like to enter something else into evidence if I could.
You already rested your case. Already rested your case. But speaking about Jimmy, and like one last thing, I got to meet Luke Edwards a couple of years ago. I had a beer with him, which was a real big thing for me as a fan of this movie, as a lifelong fan for this movie. I've probably seen this movie at least 20 times. And, it was great to just like sit down with him and talk about him and talk about his process. And it was clear that like this character was very important to him. And I think you can really see it in his performance. Again, I think you can poke all these holes in this movie about it being a commercial, or could it have handled autism better through a 2023 lens? Sure, maybe, yeah. But again, a movie that is this much of a commercial without these central performances and these dramatic ideas at their heart, it would have just been a Mac and Me. So that's why I think this movie has endured in a way that it is still beloved by its fans. I just pulled out last night my Shout Factory reissue for their anniversary. And, you don't get to a Shout Factory anniversary reissue unless it's a cult movie that has some real teeth to it. And it was great because they had this wonderful segment on it, which was a couple doctors talking about how the autism exposed in the movie is very positive, and how they show, certain pieces of him. It was far more nuanced than anyone could have expected from a movie in 1989. So it is, I think, ultimately a very positive portrayal of autism at that moment in time. And we can't really hold 2023 sensibilities and what we know about the affliction at this point to a movie from, almost 40 years ago.
And now that Mr. Bangs has rested his cases, do you have any further exhibits that you'd like to cover?
I do. I want to talk about the bounty hunter.
Mr. Putnam.
Mr. Putnam. I
Putnam
gotta
slaps.
say, look, maybe he's not the most normal looking guy you would hire to go find your child.
Hey.
Maybe he's a little odd. Maybe his practices seem a little silly. But I gotta say, watching him and Beau Bridges go toe to toe in all these different towns, trying to outgun each other and outsmart each other, trying to, taking out each other's cars and slashing each other's tires. There's some great bits with that character throughout the movie. And obviously, the culmination moment with that character is when Jenny Lewis points to him in an arcade and says, "He touched my breasts." And he is carried out of the arcade by security. Watching him get foiled over and over and over again is a joy as a child. It's a joy as an adult. Watching that recurring joke come back again when Jenny Lewis's contacts in the trucker world, Spanky comes back and and goes up to him and points and says, "You touched her breasts," and knocks him out. It's great comedy. I don't care how silly the character is. It's some great comedy. It's some great bits. It's some great recurring jokes. But I want to talk about a subplot in the movie as another exhibit.
I want to make one objection to that, because
Sure.
I actually don't care much. I think the bounty hunter's funny, but it really reduces the stakes of what's going on here. We've got, as far as they know, 2 lost children. Turns out it's really 3 who are out there hitchhiking in mortal danger at any time. Like, I mean, they're very lucky that nothing ever happens and they don't get, taken away and the very worst things happen to them. And this child bounty hunter, he wants to find Jimmy first so he can get paid. And Team Boslate, they want to find him first because I don't know. They don't want to see the bounty hunter get paid. I'm not sure what their motivations are. Like, just work with the child bounty hunter. He's probably better at finding these kids. He'll lead you to Corey, and everyone's going to get home safe. But instead, they commit these multiple felonies in broad daylight in order to sabotage each other. And it's like, these kids can be taken away and violated at any moment. Will you stop trying to impede competing efforts to protect them? Like, go, hurry. No, don't sit around your hotel room playing Nintendo. Are you serious? Your sons are in mortal danger. Would you fucking go, Bo Bridges?
But he almost got to level 4. Come on.
Yeah, he almost beat the barbarian. Look, I can't excuse Bo Bridges falling in love with video games throughout the movie. That's a unique thing. But I think that's about Bo Bridges, who is, you got to remember, this character, this dad that he's playing, he lost a child. He had his family ripped up because of it. Everything that was happy in his life has now been torn to shreds. And through this journey with his son, with his estranged son, played by Christian Slater, which, by the way, is just awesome, they come to love each other again through the power of video games. That's kind of great. I mean, I think every one of us has probably had a family member, maybe our father, who, we maybe don't always have the best relationship with them, but then you find that one thing that you can bond over, whether it's movies or sports or fishing, right? Or video games. It's great to watch that evolution. It's great to watch Bo Bridges open his heart back up again so that when he sees Jimmy do this amazing thing at the end, it leaves us with a hope that this family is going to be okay, that these characters are going to be okay, that they're going to be happy again. I would argue that seeing the resolution, seeing Jimmy's fate, seeing the parents' fate, what Fred Savage's character Corey is going to look like after that moment at the Cabazon Dinosaurs. I don't need to see that the same way that was brought up by the prosecution. I don't need to see it because all the context is there. Jimmy's opened up. Bo Bridges has opened up. Fred Savage has opened up. Everyone has opened themselves up to them being a family again, to them being happy again. And I'm okay with leaving them there. There's a key moment at the end of the movie where Christine Bateman, the ex-wife of Bo Bridges' character, played by Wendy Phillips, turns to him and says, "Sam, take our boys home." And that's how you know. You don't need to see all the sappy stuff afterwards. That one line gets it across.
So now it's our boys, huh? You wouldn't pay this bounty hunter to bring Fred Savage home, and now it's our boys, Christine?
Exactly. That's
Come
the growth.
on, you.
That's the growth.
Kristen Slater was right. She is mean.
That is storytelling, right? That is storytelling. She opened up. She grew over the course of the movie.
Thank you for lackadaisically following our sons around the country, Bo. Let's get back together.
That's right. And I think Bo, the reason he didn't want to let the bounty hunter go after these kids is very, very specific. He has too much pride. He wants to put his family back together himself, right? That's what it is. He sees an opportunity to try to put his family back together himself, and he's not going to let anyone else take that away from him. That's why he's competitive with the bounty hunter. That's why he doesn't want to work with him. He doesn't want Bateman, his ex-wife's new husband, to do that for him. He's going to do it himself. And I can understand that. But by the end of the movie, he's grown. He's changed. And
he's good at Ninja Turtles.
He's good at Ninja Turtles, which is important. He's good at Zelda 2, which is also equally important. But most important is that he's fixed his relationships with his son, and he's found a way to work with his ex-wife to move the family forward. And that is what's amazing. And notice how all these things that we're talking about, all these character arcs that we're talking about, with all these characters changing and growing, has almost nothing to do with the product placement. And that is because of how good the storytelling in this movie actually is. I would like to point to one other exhibit.
Please do.
The music. The fucking soundtrack in this movie rocks.
It slaps.
It slaps. It's awesome. There are some great needle drops in this movie. And there are some iconic montages in it. The Send Me an Angel road trip montage in this movie is iconic. That song is iconic because of this movie. I just want to make sure we make a note of that when we're evaluating this movie, because the filmmaking, again, another point back to the director, Todd Holland, he brought all of that experience working with Steven Spielberg into a movie that should not have been good. And it is, because of how strong his cast and his directing is. Speaking of the directing, there's a lot of kids in this movie. And there are a lot of kid actors in this movie. And there are some long takes with the kids talking back and forth. That's almost unheard of in bad movies, because you have to have really good kid actors to do that. Otherwise, their performances get cut to shreds. The fact that they could have one takes where you have Fred Savage and Luke Edwards and Jenny Lewis going back and forth in master shots for over a minute, 2 minutes, is super impressive. From a filmmaking standpoint, this movie is really, really strong. Whatever you think of the product placement, whatever you think of the nuances of 2023 politics onto, a movie from over almost 40 years ago, the reality is the filmmaking is still really, really sharp. And with that, I rest my case.
All sides have rested their cases. The attorneys will now present their closing arguments. Mr. Bangs, you may begin.
Your Honor, distinguished members of the court, I already explained at length how this is an extended advertisement for Nintendo, Universal Studios Hollywood, and the Creationist Museum, formerly known as the Cabazon Dinosaurs, all wrapped up in a thinly veiled ripoff of Rain Man. Now, as a commercial, it works. They even managed to make the Power Glove look pretty cool, even though I know it's so bad. But as a story, there's nothing original or compelling here. The reevaluation this film is receiving now can be chalked up to one thing: nostalgia. Nostalgia, it's a powerful drug, and seeing the old games we loved being played on the screen, that's an attractive and irresistible thing. And hell, I love when I watch old YouTube videos and they have the old 90s commercials in there still. I love being transported back to that time. It feels familiar, it feels safe. But we have to pause and remember, those commercials may be kind of fun and cute now, but back in the 90s, we have done anything to get those breaks to end and get us back to our regularly scheduled programming. Commercials are our enemy. So when you step into that jury room, make sure it's game over. No lives remaining.
Thank you for all those puns. Mr. Russo,
It was
please
not
present
even
your
a
closing
pun.
argument.
A play on words.
I urge you guys to remember that movies that are based on product placement can still be movies. Movies that are essentially commercials for products can still be movies. We're even seeing it today. Today at the box office, this weekend, a movie about Air Jordans came out. 2 weeks ago on Apple TV Plus, a movie about the making of Tetris came out. Just because this movie features Nintendo products does not make it a bad movie. Just because it mirrors some of the ideas of Rain Man does not mean that it copied Rain Man. You have to remember, movies take a long time to make. They take a long time to make. They take a long time to write. They take a long time to shoot. They take a long time to execute. This movie coming out in 1989 against Rain Man, just a year before, does not mean that they cut and paste the plot of Rain Man into this movie. They wanted to make the Karate Kid with video games. They like Karate Kid. Karate Kid is a great drama first. This movie is a great drama first. This movie isn't about video games. It's nothing to do with video games. It's about a broken family that faced tragedy, horrible tragedy. It fell apart, and it's about two brothers who found a way to bring this family back together through an extraordinary adventure. And it leaves them in a place where they can be happy. And that is why I think anytime fans who bring this movie up, still all these years later, they wrap themselves in a nostalgia blanket, yes, but it's because of good characters and good emotion and good performances and good directing. And that is why The Wizard has stood the test of time.
Thank you both.
That's the magic of The Wizard.
It's the magic of The Wizard.
Members of the jury, Mr. Big Ben Haslar, Mr. Dylan J. Schlender, and Mr. Just Keep Your Power Gloves Off, Ryan Luis Rodriguez. You've all heard the facts concerning this case. It is now up to you to determine if this film is guilty of being a bad movie. The bailiff will escort you to the deliberation room to render your verdict.
Right this way. The only Nintendo game my mother would allow me to play was Wisdom Tree's Joshua and the Battle of Jericho.
God, that relationship gets so sad every
Sounds
single time
lame.
we return to it.
Probably for the best.
At
It's
least you got
illegal,
to
too.
have a Nintendo.
Yeah, I know. Lucky guy. My mom wouldn't let me have one.
Wait, how old is the bailiff? I thought he was much older than us.
Do you want to do the interview or me, Dylan?
Oh, I was going to do the interview as my intellectually distinct Mario character.
Oh boy, that's not going to be problematic. Oh boy.
It's
'Cause I was going to do
intellectually
Big Off the White.
distinct.
Yeah, he's intellectually
As
distinct.
an Italian American, I don't know how I feel about this.
Yeah.
Oh, you
no,
should listen
that's
to
it.
another
You
That's
should
it.
be listening to a lot of old episodes if you want to get
Yeah.
offended by that.
It's just because we know the Italians are cool. They're cool
Right.
with it.
Yeah, man. Cool. All in.
All right, The Wizard. What did you think, guys? I don't know. I didn't quite agree with either case. My feelings on this were kind of in the middle on their own. Dylan, what did you think?
Well, okay, so this movie does have a reputation that precedes. Like, I'm a pretty big video game guy, so I knew that the big claim to fame here was the Super Mario 3 thing. That's really all I knew about it, right? So I had never actually seen the movie, so I
didn't either until just now.
Yeah, for bringing it to court, because let's work backwards. When Maynard said, this is being reevaluated and loved because of nostalgia, I mean, I think that's a very fair point. It's like people do like seeing the old video games. I think if you were to make this movie like today with a video game from today, like let's just say you made the Dota 2
5 or something.
Fortnite, there you go. Yeah, right. Like the Fortnite movie, we'd all groan and roll our eyes at it, realistically. And then years from now,
Well, we as adults would, but would kids of today?
they might. I don't know. But anyway, so I thought that was a very fair point. But more so, what Joe was saying when he really got into it about the story and the character development and what we were actually seeing the actors on screen do. And he very deftly pointed out everything he was talking about had nothing to do with the product placement. And I think he's right. If you strip that away, you do have this family story. There's a bit more whimsy in it. Like, I appreciate Maynard saying that, like, we're lucky these kids didn't get kidnapped and everything like that. It's like, I agree.
Yeah, but it's a
wholeheartedly.
kids movie.
Yeah, but it is a kids movie. So you have to make certain allowances, like it's like the whole Homeward Bound effect, like the part of the journey is that they're going to be, and they weren't completely safe the whole time. They got mugged a couple times, so I thought it was two very good cases. And I think that Joe put up enough of a defense that it's kind of pulling me more in his direction. But I'd like to hear what you guys have to say, of course.
Ryan?
Well, I mean, I like this movie. I didn't discover it until about maybe 5 or 6 years ago because of the riff tracks that they put out, which is amazing. I'm amazed I actually sat down and watched the movie without it because they're so interlinked for me. But I do enjoy this movie, and it is strictly out of nostalgia. Like, I don't look back at this point of time and think, oh, things were really great for representation of neurodivergence. I think that it's still kind of shitty looking back in retrospect. But again, that's 1989. We weren't thinking about that stuff, which is our fault. We should have been thinking about that stuff, but we weren't.
Who's we? I was 2.
I was 3. What are you going to do about it?
You should have thought harder, kids.
That's that stuff bothers me. The fact that they get very unspecific about it really kind of pisses me off. But then I also look at the nostalgic aspect where at that time, I wasn't playing video games because I was 3 years old, but I was going with my family to Universal Studios Hollywood. And so getting to see the old animatronic King Kong, which has since burned down like 15 years ago, that is a very specific like pleasure center for my brain. And I love watching the movie for that scene. But the problem is that's 3 minutes of the movie. The rest of the movie has nothing to do with that. And that's not saying that the rest of the movie is bad, but the stuff that is appealing to me on a nostalgic level goes by pretty quickly.
All right, so Ben, you were saying you were kind of in the middle. What does that mean?
Well, for me, it's about like how it tried to execute its things. Like it did have these ideas, but how well did it really execute them? Like the family dynamic sort of thing. I feel like that was secondary to them selling video games, to them getting Super Mario Brothers 3 out there and everyone knowing about the whistle and everything like that. And even that advertisement thing doesn't make sense because like the whole time that sequence is playing out, you're wondering like, how does this girl even know there is a warp? Why is what's going on here? They didn't really think out these scenes entirely well for me. I mean, it's a kid's movie, sure, but there's only so far that gets you where things stop adding up to me. The autism thing equaling superpowers, and just because like his skills are sort of monetizable now is kind of bad. It definitely looks bad now. It should have looked bad then because he does have a relationship with his brother, I guess, but everyone else only seems to see him as being worthy once he, can win $50,000 with his autistic superpowers. So I don't know that the execution in these things, while done from, decent motives, the family place, and I'm not as opposed to selling video games as in a movie. I still don't know that it lands those points the way it wants to.
So maybe this is going to be controversial, but like this whole autism thing is not bothering me as much as it's bothering everyone else, because clearly you have to heap on the fact that he had PTSD with it, and it's not about people only finding value in him for playing video games. This is finally he could express himself through playing video games. I think you guys are looking at this with a very cynical eye.
The girl is the one that has the gambling superpowers, though.
Well,
how does she know it's going to be a hard 8 or an easy 8? Like they just
and of course, of course, the girl's in it for herself, but that's okay. They're self-interested characters.
No, I'm okay with that. I don't know why she knows a network of truckers that are her best friends. That's kind of, I think there's a backstory there that's very interesting to me.
I wouldn't say that I'm looking back with cynicism, though. I'm looking back with disappointment. Mm-hmm. I'm not looking back and saying, well, of course they're going to capitalize us because we're autistic. I don't really, and that's not the way I'm looking at it. I just think that it's a bummer when this stuff happens. And I don't look at it and say, well, that's the industry. I just look at it and I say, well, that's not cool. And it doesn't matter when the movie was made. When something's not cool, it's just not cool.
I don't know. I think it was pretty cool that he was able to win $50K by playing video games. He has a very
every kid's dream,
skill.
Right?
Yeah,
finally, exactly. I have value. There's one thing that I'm good at. The world now sees as valuable.
Well, and that's the other thing. You guys are the ones saying that's the only thing he's good at. You guys are.
Well, I mean, as a kid, just as a normal kid, not even autistic kid, you'd like look at that and be like, I'm good at video games. I want to do that.
I mean, he was building a little fort for himself. He had these really painful emotions about his sister when he brought the lunchbox to the dinosaur park. I mean, I'm just saying, I don't want to sell this kid short.
That's fair. All right. Well, are we locking in?
I'm going on record. I thought it was a great case. I love the research that Maynard brought about how the Power Glove actually does suck. I was more of a Power Pad guy myself. That thing was
NES
sweet as
Advantage.
hell. Yeah, that should have been in the movie. So I appreciate that perspective, but at the end of the day, I thought Joe brought the better case. He was able to make that human connection, point out where this movie works and works well, and that's enough to get it to not guilty for me.
Where are you swerving, Ryan? You taking my power from me?
Well, I will. I mean, I said before I like this movie. I don't think I like it for the reasons that it wants me to like it. So I'm going to have to go, unfortunately, guilty.
Ooh.
It's up to you, Ben. It's up to you, buddy.
Yeah, I'm thinking about its worth at the time and its worth now. If I were an adult watching this at the time and, for my kids' sake, I would be bored. Like I wouldn't care about Super Mario Brothers 3. In fact, I'd be sighing that, now my kids are going to be begging me to buy this. Thank you very much, movie. If I'm watching this now, I do see the nostalgia aspect of it. But I don't know that that's good, necessarily. It is a security blanket, but that doesn't make a good film. So the only thing that can maybe save it is Jimmy and the kid's journey. And that does feel like an afterthought to me, with kind of very kid-laden comedy that it sort of leans on to make it a family film. I'm going to go guilty.
You guys are monsters.
Let's go tell that very handsome judge.
Mr. Foreman, have you reached a verdict?
We have, Your Honor. In the case of the People versus the Wizard, we find the defendant guilty of being a bad movie.
That's like a video game losing sound.
Thank you for
Game
pointing that
over,
out, Rob.
man. Game over.
Game over, man.
The verdict is so rendered. The Wizard is hereby sentenced to a remake in which a Sega Genesis competition will be held at a Knott's Berry farm. Court is adjourned.
There's your chance.
Woohoo! This is Dario, intellectually distinct, reporting you live from outside of Reels of Justice. Maynard Bangs, would you care to share your thoughts on this jury's verdict? Woohoo!
What exactly makes you intellectually distinct? Like, what makes you different?
Oh, I have a D on my hat.
Oh, okay.
He's clearly dressed in maroon and not red, right?
You could have said like Dahu or anything different. I drew the lot of this case, and I also kind of enjoyed this movie. I do think it was nostalgia, but I also got to watch it with two kids too, and they liked it. So they're clearly the audience for it, and they enjoyed it. So I did my research. I dug into the problems that people have had with this movie, and I just tried to represent those problems as well as I could, and it seemingly was enough. So, that's that. That's the way the cookie crumbles.
Oh, let's go! Well done. And here comes a Joe Russo. Excuse me, could we get a word on how you feel about today's verdict? Wahoo!
I feel like an injustice has been served. I think most of the people involved actually liked the movie, and they got swayed by someone's rawness over the Power Glove. So if it was up to me, I would appeal. But it feels like this should have been a mistrial based on the Power Glove, in my opinion.
Well, that's all the time we have from the courthouse today.
You went like Irish.
What? Toy. Intellectually distinct I am.
Let's
go back to the studio for post-trial analysis.
Exactly. If he's an Irish electrician, now you have an intellectually distinct character.
His name being Dario is enough.
It's not, actually. It's not how intellectually distinct works. Yeah, Joe, that is how it works. I like lots of bad movies, so liking a movie is usually not enough to save it. I like lots of crap. I like Manos Hands of Fate.
I don't think it's bad though. I think this was a miscall.
I agree.
Justice is very rarely.
What do you, the listeners at home, think?
It's not a perfect system. It's just the only system we have.
A broke system's right twice a day.
Exactly. It really depends. It really depends who you draw on the jury, honestly.
But if Maynard was in the jury, that probably would be innocent.
Oh, I would have been spinning the Power Glove as a positive. Absolutely. Fun case. So, Joe, what have you been up to lately? What's been keeping you busy?
Well, I am a screenwriter and producer, and lots of development right now. I don't know if by the time this airs or not, the Writers Guild will be on strike, but
again,
again, and yeah, we're looking down the barrel of another strike. But we'll see how the next couple weeks progress. I would like it not to happen because I have a lot of things in the fire I'm excited about. We're casting a movie right
maybe
now.
You'll get some better benefits.
Maybe. Well, yeah, no, I mean, I would like good things to come out of the negotiation, but I don't really want to stop working on everything I'm doing. But yeah, I mean, I've got a movie that we're casting, and I've got 2 movies in post-production right now, which will hopefully come out, later this year, early next. And, and just praying that the studios won't make us go on strike.
Yeah, well, we will see. We'll find out if it does. Do you have obviously maybe you can't talk about any of those things yet since they're all in development. You got NDAs and stuff. So I know you did produce Nightmare Cinema, right?
I think that's on Nightmare Cinema.
I think that's on Shudder. Is that where I saw
it was on Shudder. Our
was.
3-year agreement with them expired, and we are currently on Tubi.
Yes, in the big leagues now, baby.
That's right. Now you're big swinging. We're big fans of Tubi around here.
Hey, it's free,
That'll get Schlenzo to watch it for sure. But yeah, I saw
putting
it on
the queue right now, man.
That's a fun one.
And I really liked it.
It's go ahead.
Anthology horror. I was going to say it's an anthology horror film for anyone not familiar. So it's 5 different directors for 5 different stories. And I know we've talked on another podcast too, but my favorite one's the first one. So I think everyone should see it and then decide what your favorite one is.
Yes, I would love to hear what their favorite ones are because it's really fascinating. Everyone has different ones. But that first one is very good. Another movie that came out recently that I was a producer on is called The Greatest Beer Run Ever. It's on Apple TV Plus. Probably a good candidate for this court at some point down the road.
It's such a great title, though.
Yeah, that's a biography of mine, I think.
It's a super fun movie, and I feel like the critics were overly harsh on it. So it, hopefully someday it'll have a reappraisal down the road. But no one seems to have Apple TV Plus, so it also requires people to be able to see it.
How would you feel about coming on and defending your own work in court?
I think that would not be for me.
I don't know. I also don't know how I feel about that. I don't really like people defending their own thing. We've had people come on and trash their own thing, right? Like Tales from the Crypt.
I feel like I have a couple movies on my resume I could probably do that with, but
but not something as grand as The Greatest Beer Run Ever. Still a great title.
It is a great title. It's a true story.
It's like one that writes itself, right? Like once you got the title, like basically half your job's done.
It's a true story about a guy who all his friends got drafted into Vietnam, and he decided to bring 2 cases of Pabst Blue Ribbon over to Vietnam and find them on the battlefield. So, like The Wizard, it is also kind of a road trip movie.
A travel adventure movie.
Travel adventure.
Oh, yeah, that genre you've definitely heard of before. Travel adventure.
I've heard of that.
I just
travel adventure.
Indiana
really,
Jones travels in the adventures.
Do they call it a travel adventure?
I call them road trip movies.
There you go. That's actually a thing.
That's a subgenre of comedy
of travel adventure.
Travel adventure.
Maybe just adventure. The thing is, what adventures don't require travel? I mean, that's what
the ones of the imagination.
I told
of the
you
mind.
to watch Tron, dude. They're in VR. They don't go anywhere. That's what.
But The Greatest Beer Run sounds great. Although did he not know there's lots of beer in Vietnam and our soldiers drank lots of it all the time?
It was about bringing American beer. Pabst Blue Ribbon.
Dude, it's about the
Yes, no. When he gets there, he learns kind of how silly this endeavor was. But That's part of the growth,
Spoilers!
man.
God, don't
It
spoil
does-
the movie.
It does make sense, though. It's Pabst Blue Ribbon. So.
That's
And
part
it
of the
does- it
growth,
sounds good. I
guys,
wanna see
which
it
is
now.
important. Growth is important in good movies.
Yeah, no, but Ryan and Ben are gonna hate it because they're just gonna see the PBR. You monsters.
Where's that one available?
Yeah, that one's
Apple
available on
TV
Apple
Plus.
TV Plus.
Okay,
All right. Who's got Apple TV Plus here?
I
Man,
don't.
apparently I'm the
I'll
only
have to
one
borrow someone
listening to
else's.
Joe tonight.
Oh,
My God.
man. All right. Well, we'll have to find a friend that has this. I don't know.
Oh, I know a guy.
Oh, good. So we always ask for recommendations from our guests for movies that you think people should see. So what is a movie that you think people should see besides The Greatest Beer Run?
Well, I'm going to stick to video games since that seems to be the theme of the show. I'm going to recommend a movie that I mentioned a little bit earlier
Yes.
when The Wizard was maligned. I'm going to mention Tetris.
Thank you. Ah.
Tetris is a great thriller, which you would not expect from a movie about Tetris. Apparently, true story, they had to basically smuggle the rights to Tetris out of Soviet Russia in the late 80s to get it on the Game Boy, and this is the true story of how it happened. It's got a little bit of kind of entrepreneurial movie meets a thriller, which is like a really interesting mesh. I quite enjoyed it. I quite enjoyed it for probably a lot of the nostalgic reasons. I also enjoy The Wizard. But I think it's a fun watch. Also, so when you subscribe to Apple TV Plus, you can check out Tetris and you can check out The Greatest Beer Run Ever.
There's
go.
the poster.
It's
right
a
there.
double
There's
feature.
the cell. It's a double
And I
feature.
can finally watch Ted Lasso too. I've been putting it
There you
off.
Might as well. And I think there's some Tom Hanks movies on there for you too.
That's right.
Excellent recommendation. That was actually going to be my recommendation. I
Because
wrote
you
out
totally saw
a
it.
really good, very astute, memorable recommendation. Can't read it now, of course. So I'm going to go to my backup. You're lucky I had one. It has nothing to do with our movie though.
I
So
love this.
my recommendation this week is the 2023 historical crime drama / travel adventure entitled
Yes.
Boston Strangler,
Oh,
or
yeah.
as or as
Oh,
we
that's
call him over,
mine.
or as we call him over at Fenway, just the Strangler. This flick is a wicked pisser. It stars Keira Knightley, back from obscurity as a very convicted reporter. That's convicted like she's got conviction, not convicted like my stupid half-brother Marvin from North Dorchester. Okay, I can't keep that up. It's just a recommendation. I don't have to work this hard. Anyway, Keira plays a reporter who first breaks the news of and inevitably tries to solve the rash string of killings in the 1960s attributed to the so-called Boston Strangler. Produced by Ridley Scott and desperately wishing it were directed by David Fincher, this film has the foul stink of being a Zodiac wannabe, but it's been 16 years since that was first released, so it's not exactly riding its coattails. The movie features great performances from Knightley, as well as Carrie Coon. The period set design was appropriately smoke-filled, and I even learned something. While I was under the impression that the Strangler case was all wrapped up in a neat little package, this movie enlightened me to the controversies still surrounding it and the political forces behind why it was closed so hastily in the first place. So not only do we still have this Zodiac killer guy running around, now we got to catch this damn Boston Strangler while we're at it. And don't get me started on that Jack the Ripper creep. When are the authorities going to stop dragging their feet and put these men behind bars? In the meantime, Boston Strangler is currently streaming on Hulu. Support your local library. Ryan, what is your recommendation?
My recommendation this week is actually on topic because it's about a game. Another recent release, Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves.
I also
Now,
want
there's a travel adventure for
I
you.
cannot discern how faithful or unfaithful it is to the source material because primarily I've never played a D&D campaign, I've never rolled a 20-sided die, and I have no real affinity for the fantasy genre. That said, I had a honking good time. The action is inventive and well-staged, the characters are endearing, and Chris Pine is hot as fuck. I also can't say that I understood the entirety of the film because I drank too much soda and had to get up to pee 3 times, but I look forward to giving it my full attention when it's on Blu-ray and my bladder is less full. As of this recording, Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves is currently playing at your local cinema, and if it's not, Just wait a few months and watch it on Paramount Plus, you deadbeat.
A few months. How optimistic.
Yeah, call me when it's on Tubi, please.
Exactly. Ryan, we need to have a Dungeons and Dragons campaign. We can have one over like Zoom or something.
Playing D&D on Zoom sucks.
For what?
You got to be in person.
Well, we can't fly Ryan out here, but we'll try. Let's go to Big Ben. What have you got?
Except for a brief reference to Ninja Gaiden, Japan, the country who created Nintendo and Super Mario Bros., is strangely absent from The Wizard, and so I'm going to use my recommendation to call out my annual film festival that I put on by our friends in the Pacific, and say you should check out JFF Plus, where they pick a selection of films every year, many unavailable here for watching. And one of my favorites this year is one called Shiver, which is an 89-minute taiko drum percussive concert with immersive visuals featuring mystical lands as it plays through. I seem to have an annual tradition with JFF to have a film that I'm least excited for, and it being the one that blows me away. And Shiver is my pick for this year as the one that hit that mark. So turn the lights down and turn your best sound system up, and you can stream it for free until July.
So it's like a concert, or
no? Yeah, it's a taiko drum concert, but it's got
taiko Drum Master the game. He's
like the remote control trucks. Taiko. Yeah.
No.
You guys, uncultured swine.
I know what Taiko Drum Master is. I played that game. That's why I'm asking. That's with the big batons, right?
Yeah, there's different drums that they play, but yeah, it's a concert.
I'm assuming the game is based on a real drum, Schlenzo.
I mean, it might be, but he said the game.
Why don't you send us on home?
Someone's got to do it. So my recommendation is the latest travel adventure movie I watched, and that is Mary in the Witch's Flower, which was directed by Hiromasa Yonebayashi.
Perfect.
Man, I think I got it. It released in the year of our Lord 2017. From the outset, the film presents a captivating premise replete with whimsy and wonder. We are introduced to our young and plucky protagonist, Mary, who sets out on a fantastical adventure through a world of magic and intrigue. The film is a veritable visual fest of stunningly rendered landscapes, enchanting characters that leap from the screen. But more so, the movie's narrative has a certain amount of charm, and it's very heartwarming. Mary's journey is one of self-discovery as she learns to harness her own latent witch powers and find her place in this crazy world of hers. The film's themes of friendship, courage, and perseverance are woven throughout with a deft touch. Mary in the Witch's Flower, again, delightful film that is sure to captivate viewers of all ages with its stunning visuals. And I would recommend this film to anyone who wants a bit of magic, like The Wizard, and wonder in their lives. I don't know if it's streaming anywhere, and you will have to watch it with subtitles.
Not on Tubi?
No, not on Tubi.
It should
Not
be on
on
HBO
Tubi.
Max because it's Studio Ghibli.
It's not Studio. No, it's not Studio Ghibli. No, it's Ponko, I think is what they are called.
Oh, okay.
It's the
That's
first...
all the same to me.
Studio Ghibli.
Oh, wow.
It's on Prime. Schlenzo, it's on Prime.
It's on Prime. I went through all that trouble to watch it. I could have just watched it on Prime. Oh, well, that's fine.
Part of it's about the adventure and finding it.
That's true. I had both the travel adventure looking for it.
You earned that life.
Exactly, the travel adventure, and you could have just watched the greatest beer run ever on Apple Plus, which you should.
Hey, call me when it's on Tubi.
It's an Apple movie. I think it'll be hard to end up on Tubi, but you never know. Maybe they'll start
freebie then.
Maybe Apple will buy Tubi. They should.
Maybe Tubi will buy Apple. And with that, that's all. We're all out of time, but we want to thank our guest, Joe Russo, for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you guys for having me. I still regret failing The Wizard, but it was fun. It was fun while it lasted.
Well, you had your
you didn't
word,
fail The Wizard. The court failed you.
We failed you, yes.
The kangaroo court. But we hope to have you back again. Hopefully you get a much more fair jury that time. And we hope everyone else will join us again as well, as the reels of justice keep turning.
Count it.
King Kong!
Please follow us on Twitter at Reels of Justice, Instagram Reels of Justice, and Facebook.com/Reels of Justice.